Morning, everyone. Welcome to the August edition of the Ag Economic Dialogue Sessions. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see a full house of everyone that's in joining the session today. So we do have two presentations today, going to talk about land rents, values, and some land use changes and information in that direction. So without any further hold up from me, I'm going to turn it over to Hoanh, and she's going to kick off today's presentations, and then we will that'll be followed up by Tong Wang. So I will just turn the screen over there, Han, and if you want to take over, we'll go from there.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Let me share my screen. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the August Ag Economics Dialogue. My name is Hoanh, an SDSU Extension Economics Research Field Specialist. And today I'm going to talk about the South Dakota agricultural and market trends result from the 2024 SDSU Extension Farm Real Estate Survey. Here's the roadmap of my talk. First, I will introduce the survey, and then I present the result from the 2024 SDSU Extension Farm Real Estate Survey. Next, I will talk about the factors that affect the farmland market and the expectation on future farmland values that we learned from the survey. So let me start with the introduction. The 2024 SDSU Extension Farm Real Estate Survey is the 34th annual survey. If you follow SDSU Extension or you follow the survey, you may know that it started in 1991 by Professor Larry Johnson. And after his retirement, Jack Davis took over the survey. Last year, I joined SDSU and worked with Jack Davis on the survey. The purpose of it is to provide unbiased information and provide an annual update on South Dakota agricultural land values and cash rental rates by land use and land quality across regions in South Dakota. This is an expert opinion survey. What it means is that we ask our land experts their opinions about the land values and cash rental rates in county where they conduct business based on their best assessment. And please know that the survey and the information in the report are not intended to provide direct estimate for any particular parcel. The 2024 survey is an online survey through Question Pro web-based application. In the beginning of February, we sent an email with the survey link to 650 potential respondents. We also sent an email to remind every 2 weeks in February and every week for the first 2 weeks of March. We also post the survey links on the South Dakota Bankers Association e-news. The 2024 SDSU Extension Farm Real Estate Survey report comes from 280 usable responses from 68 respondents. The number of usable responses is larger compared to the respondent. The reason is we ask our respondents to report land values and cash rental rates in multiple counties if they are knowledgeable about the land market conditions in multiple counties. Our respondents are the appraisers, assessors, art lenders, real estate agents, brokers, and so on. Most of the responses we receive are for the 5 regions east of the Missouri River. We didn't receive many responses for the Southwest and Northwest regions. Therefore, our estimate for the Southwest and Northwest regions are based on 5 usable responses for the Southwest and 5 usable responses for the Northwest regions. We hope we will be able to improve the respondent rate for the Southwest and Northwest regions in the future surveys. This is the table of the main occupation of our respondents. The majority of our respondents is the bank loan officers or the art lenders, which account for 22.1% of the respondents. The appraisers account for 27.9% of the respondents. These 2 groups account for 50% of the respondents. We also have a small amount of respondents come from the extension specialists, farm service agencies, builders or broker, county assessor, farm managers, insurance agents. Here are the livestock insurance agents or the crop insurance agents. And others are some of the landowners or the people who retired from those main occupations. Most of the ag land are cropland or hayland. For regions west of the Missouri River, most of the ag land are pasture or grassland. We report the per acre value of non-irrigated cropland and pasture for A regions. For East regions and South Central regions, we follow the boundaries from the USDA crop reporting district. For the Southwest and Northwest regions, USDA divide into Southwest, Northwest, and West Central. However, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't receive enough response for these regions. Therefore, we only divide into Southwest and Northwest regions. So this is the difference between our report and the USDA report. If you read the USDA report, you will see South Dakota was divided into 9 regions. For our report, it will be 8 regions. And this also answers the question that we got from many people, why we divided the regions like the way we did in our report. The answer is we follow the USDA crop reporting district. Also, there are differences in land value and rental rates assessed within regions. So for region east of the river, we further break it down into county cluster and report the per acre value and cash rental rates by county cluster. If you look at this map, would delineate the boundaries of the regions, which is the black line, and the county plus cluster boundaries, which is the blue line. As you can see here, we have 5 regions in the east of the river and 3 regions in the west of the river. And for the 5 regions east of the river, we further divide to 3 county cluster per regions. For example, if we look at the southeast regions, Turner, Lincoln, Clay, and Unions are in 1 county cluster. Hutchinson, Bonham, and Yenton are in 1 county cluster. Dallas and Charmis are in 1 county cluster. Next, let me talk about the result from the 2024 SDSU Extension for Real Estate Survey. From the 2024 survey, the state average value of non-irrigated cropland is $6,119 per acre. The state average of cash rental rates for non-irrigated cropland is $170 per acre. The state average value of pasture or rangeland is $1,599 per acre, and the state average cash rental rate is $45 per acre. If we look at this map, we show the cash rental rate and land value of non-irrigated cropland by regions. We have a regions with a different color here. The high, average, and low mean high productivity or high quality land, average mean average productivity land, or low mean low productivity land. The second row are the cash rental rate, and the third row are the land values. If you look at the map here, the East Central regions and the Southeast regions are the 2 regions has the highest cash rental rate and land value among the 8 regions in South Dakota. Northwest and Southwest regions are the 2 regions has the lowest cash rental rate and land value in South Dakota. The ranking of the regions is consistent with the ranking from the previous year survey. Also, if you move from the east to the west, the land value and cash rental rate decreasing as you move from the right to the left or from the east to the west. This table reports the average value of non-irrigated cropland by regions in 2023, 2024, and the percentage change from 2023 to 2024. Except for the Northwest regions, which experienced a 1.7% decrease in non-irrigated cropland value. All other regions experienced an increase from 7.6% in the East Central region to 16.9% in the South Central regions. The state average experienced an increase by 12.1% from $5,458 in 2023 to $6,119 in 2024. These maps show the cash rental rates and land value by county cluster. Counties that are in the same colors, county with the same color are in the same county cluster. For example, if we look at point D here, the Southeast regions, Turner, Lincoln, Clay, and Union are in the same county cluster and has the highest cash rental rate and land value for the Southeast regions. Dallas and Charmis are in the same county cluster and has the lowest current rental rate and land value for the Southeast region. And another example for if we look at Partner C, the East Central region. Moody and Minnehaha are in the same county cluster, which has the highest current rental rate and land values in the East Central region. Kingsbury, Sanborn, Minor, Davidson, and Hansons are in the same county cluster and has the lowest current rental rate and land values in East Central regions. As you can see here, within the regions, the difference between the land value and cash rental rate between the county cluster is quite large. These maps show the cash rental rate and land value for the rest of the 4 regions. For the South Central, Northwest, and Southwest regions, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't receive enough response, so we didn't break it down into county cluster. But if we look at the Central regions, Biddle, Churro, and Aurora are in one county cluster and has the highest cut rental rate and land value for the Central regions. Sully and Hughes are in the same county cluster and has the lowest cut rental rate and land value for the Central region. Next, let's move to the pasture. This map reports the cash rental rate and land values of pasture by regions. Again, we have a regions with a different color here. And if we look at the East Central regions and the Southeast regions, these 2 regions has the highest cash rental rate and land value for the pasture among the 8 regions. The Northwest and Southwest are the 2 regions has the lowest cash rental rate and value of pasture among the 8 regions. And the ranking of these regions are consistent with the ranking of the value of non-erratic cropland earlier. Again, if we move from the east to the west, or we move from the right to the left, the cash rental rate and land value decreasing as we move from the east to the west. This table reports the average value of pasture or rangeland by regions in 2023, 2024, and the percentage change from 2023 to 2024. Except the Northwest region, which experienced a 1% decrease in the value of the pasture. Or other regions experienced an increase from 16.1% in the East Central region to 28.5% in the North Central regions. The state average experienced an increase of 15.5% from 2023 to 2024. One thing to note here is that the Northwest regions account for 36% of total amount of pasture in the state, according to the Census Act in 2022. Therefore, when we calculate the state average, it will weighted down by the Northwest regions. These maps show the cash rental rate and value of pasture by county cluster. If we look at the Southeast regions, Turner, Lincoln, Clay, and Union are the county cluster has the highest cash rental rate and land values for the Southeast region. The Dulles and Charmis are in the same county cluster and has the lowest cash rental rate and value of pasture in the Southeast regions. However, if you look at Dulles and Charmis county cluster and Hutchinson, Bonham, and Yenton, the difference in the cash rental rate and land value between these county clusters is not large. Or if we look at the East Central regions, Moody and Minnehaha County Cluster and Brookings, Lake, and Marco County Cluster, the difference in the land value and cash rental rate between these 2 county clusters is not large. It's not the same as the non-irrigated cropland, where we have the cash rental rate and the land value between county cluster quite large for non-irrigated cropland. But for the pasture, the difference between county cluster is not that big. And this map shows the average value of cash rental rate and land value for the rest of the 4 regions. These tables report the monthly rental rate and for 2024 per pair and yearling. In the monthly rental rates in 2024 per pair range between $47 in the Western region to $61 in the Central regions, with the low of $35 in the South Central regions and the high of $76 in the East Central regions and in the Central regions and in the Eastern region. The monthly rental rate yielding in 2024 ranged between $37 for the Western regions and Eastern region to $42 in the Central region, with the low of $28 for the South Central regions and the high of $55 also in the South Central regions. Next, let's talk about the gross rate of return to ag land. Ag land is a capital asset which generates income. Therefore, gross rate of return is one of the measures that many landowners pay attention to. The gross rate of return is used to estimate the current rate of return to land and is calculated from the respondent report, average cash rental rate, and the estimated value of land. Historically, the gross rate of return is higher for the non-irrigated cropland compared to the pasture. However, the gap between the two becomes smaller and smaller over time, and in 2024, the gross rate of return is 2.8 for the non-irrigated cropland and also 2.8 for the pasture. If you look at this graph, which shows the gross rate of return from 1991 to 2024, the yellow line is the gross rate of return to non-irrigated cropland, and the blue line is the gross rate of return to pasture or rangeland. If we look to 1991, when our survey started, the gross rate of return to non-irrigated cropland is 8.4%. The gross rate of return to pasture in 1991 is 7.2%. But the gap between the two lines becomes smaller and smaller over time, especially after 2021. In 2024, the gross rate of returns are the same for non-irrigated cropland and pasture and equal to 2.8%. Next, let me talk about the factors that affect the farmland market. So we asked our respondents who are the main buyers in the county where they report, and 75.8% of the respondents report the main buyers in the counties where they report are the local farmer. Only 24.2% of the respondents report the main buyers are the investor. We also asked the respondents what are the reasons for people to buy land. The most important reason for people to buy land is to expand their current operation, which report by 30% of the respondents. Investment is also another important reason for people to buy land, which reported by 23% of the respondents. The availability of the parcel of farmland is another reason for people to buy land, which report by 21% of the respondents. Strong cash on hand is another important reason for people to buy land and reported by 19% of the respondents. In the survey, we also asked respondents to list 3 factors that negatively affected the current farmland market and 3 factors that positively affect the current farmland market value. And the negative factors that people list the most is, or the most concern is, the high interest rate, which mentioned by 43.3% of the respondents. Weakening commodity price is another reason, or another factors that people concerns, and mentioned by 31.7% of the respondents. The positive factors that positively affected the farmland markets are the availability of cash, which mentioned by 48.5% of the respondents. The availability of the parcel or the tract, which mentioned by 30% of the respondents. Limited land supply is another positive factors that affect the farmland market, and mentioned by 20% of the respondents. Next, let's talk about the expectation on future farmland value we learned from this survey. So we asked our respondents to predict the farmland values in 1 year and 5 years from now. Our respondent expectation on long-term land values remain optimistic, with 58% of the respondents expect an increase in land value 5 years from now, would range between 5 to 20%. However, they are less optimistic about the short-term land values, with 40.3% of the respondents expect the land value will remain at current value. 31.3% of the respondents expect a decrease in farmland value 1 year from now. So let's see if those expectations will reflect in our 2025 survey. Let me conclude here. The growth in South Dakota farmland values remain firm in 2024 survey. The average Value of non-irrigated cropland increased by 12.1%. Average value of pasture or rangeland increased by 15.5%. Factors that support the increase in land values include strong cash on hand, the availability of the pasture or the tract with the desire to expand their current operation, and limited land supplies. Our respondent expectations are optimistic in the long term. However, they are less optimistic in the short term. If you want to take a look at the full report, South Dakota Agriculture Land Market Trends from 1991 to 2024, you can go to extension.sdstate.edu. I will show you where we can find the report because this is one of the questions we get from many people for us. So if you go to extension.sdstate.edu and you scroll down, you will find this South Dakota Agricultural Land Market Trends, and you click into the link. You will find this year report, and this is the full report for our survey in 2024. And if you also can find the previous year report. Also, I wrote an article on historical land trends in South Dakota agricultural land values by land use. You can also find it on the extension website. So if you are interested in the historical agricultural land values by land use, you can take a look at my article here where I show the historical land values by regions from 1991 to 2024 for the non-irrigated cropland and pasture. Also, at SDSU Extensions, we host a webinar on the South Dakota non-farming landowner information session, where we will provide information on the update from the latest Census of Ag and current agricultural economy, the South Dakota agricultural land market trends, different types of lease, benefit and limitation, conservation practice, adoption and the benefits, and the availabilities of the conservation program and where the landowners can find this program. You can find the link to the webinar or the event from the extension webpage on the events page as well. If you are interested in the information, you can consider to join us, or if you know anyone that may be interested in those information, please help us to pass those information to them. And here is my contact information. If you have any question about the report or about the program, you can send me an email or call me. I'm happy to answer your question, and I'm happy to take any question if you have none. Thank you.
Hoanh, any questions as we move forward here? You don't have any in the chat, so I think we'll move to Tong, and then, towards the end, we will take questions and turn the recording off so that we can get everybody's questions answered there as well. So,
yep, sure.
With that, I will turn it over to Tong.
Okay, let me share my screen first. Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So my presentation today would be the land use conversion in South Dakota. So some background here is we know that South Dakota is located in the western margin of the Corn Belt. It has been a hotspot of grassland to cropland conversion. So from 1980 to 2000, we have 1/5 of the South Dakota grassland converted to cropland during that time, because the Corn Belt actually expanded westward during the same time. And from 2006 to 2012, and we see the dramatic net decline in grassland cover in South Dakota, especially in the east of the Missouri River. So the loss of grassland can lead to different environmental issues, such as increased soil erosion, nutrient loss, loss of the soil carbon, and then loss of wildlife and even habitat, and further reduces biodiversity. So that's some background. So because there are some damages of the grassland converted to cropland, so there has been programs available for the grassland conservation. So I listed 3 programs here. So one is the salt saver provision. It is established by the 2014 Farm Bill, which disincentivizes the grassland conversion by reducing the crop insurance premium subsidies during the first 4 years of crop production on previously native salt land. And then there is a second century working land habitat program, which started in 2019, which offers payments for converting marginal cropping land in South Dakota into the wildlife habitat with the option for the grazing uses. And then there are the grassland CRP and the grassland easement programs, which offer compensation also to the producers. So with the purpose to incentivize grassland preservation for the wildlife habitat and the grazing purposes. So with that, we see that with over the 2012 to 2017 period, we see that the grassland to cropland conversion rate have declined compared to the 2006 to 2012 period. However, we found that nobody have looked at the land use conversion trends after 2017. So what happens between 2017 to 2023? So we try to look at what's the recent land use conversion trend and what's the motivation behind the conversion decisions. So that's why we carried out a survey among 3,500 South Dakota farmers in 2023. So here is a just a demonstration of our sample in each county. So we surveyed the producers who have grassland. They have more than 100 acres of pasture and more than 50 livestock. So that's a distribution of the producers over South Dakota. So we sent out 4 waves of surveys. First, we give them advanced letter. There is an option to take the survey online, and then we send a paper survey. And after the paper survey, we give them a reminder postcard and eventually another paper survey. So out of the 3,500 surveyed ranchers, we have some ranchers in either eligible or their mailing addresses are not deliverable. So eventually we got 472 responses, which a response rate of nearly 15%. So we calculate the aggregate acres represented by our respondents. So together they have 1.4 million acres of grassland, which equals to 6% of South Dakota's grassland. And our respondents also have 0.5 million cropland acres, which equal to 3% of the South Dakota cropland. So we asked the respondents about their land use conversion decisions in the past 5 years. So our survey was carried out in 2023. So the last 5 years will be 2018 to 2023, around that time. So among the respondents, we found that producers have converted both sides. So from the grassland to cropland, we found about 12% who have converted from grassland to cropland, and then about 26% have converted from cropland to grassland. So that means we found a much higher percentage of producers who actually converted their cropland to grassland compared to those did it otherwise. So, and look at the acres converted. So this is among the people who actually converted. So they converted about 160 acres from grassland to cropland, but then the acres converted from cropland to grassland is also higher on average, is above 220 acres. And then the percentage of acres converted, this is 17% of acres converted from grassland to cropland, and then they have more than nearly 1/4 of their cropland to grassland. So, and based on our survey responses, we found like 0.5% of grassland was converted to cropland during the 2018 to 2022 period, while 44% of cropland was converted to grassland during the same period. So this is overall in aggregated among our survey respondents. So altogether, we found like grassland acres experienced a net annual increase rate of 0.2% during this 5-year period from 2018 to 2022. So we also asked about their plan in the next 5 years. Like whether they plan to make further conversions during the next 5 years. So we found like, so people who plan to convert from grassland to cropland is about 11%, and who plan to convert from cropland to grassland is about 15%. So it's the cropland to grassland conversion rate is still a little bit higher in the next 5 years, that shows. And we look at a little bit into their details. We found that people who plan to convert in the future, 40% of them have converted in the past as well, and 60% have not converted in the past, but they plan to convert in the future. And from the cropland to grassland, also we find like 1/3 of previous converters and 2/3 of producers, they have never converted before, but they want to convert some cropland to grassland. And we another thing we look at is what type of people are more likely to convert. So we divide people, the producers, into 2 categories using the percentage of their grassland to the total farmland. So we find the median value is about 2/3 of their farmland or grassland based on the survey respondents provided value. So we divided them into 2 groups. If they have less than 2/3 of their land, their farmland in grass, this is one group. If they have more than 2/3 of their land in grass, this is another group. So we look at these 2 groups, and we found like the conversion rate from the grassland to cropland. So this conversion rate within the producer group with less grass is much higher. So which means if producers have less grassland, they are more likely to convert their existing grassland to cropland. However, if they have more grassland, they are less likely to convert the grassland to cropland. So basically, we found the trend is a specialization trend. So people who have more grassland, they don't like to convert, but people who have more cropland, they want to convert more to cropland. And then the same trend is found here from cropland to grassland. We found like people with more grassland, they are more likely to convert to grassland. So with more grassland, they want more grassland, but with more cropland, they want more cropland. So they're kind of a specialization trend if we divide people into 2 groups. And another thing we did is divide people based on their region, either from the eastern region or western region. We found like eastern region, South Dakota, more likely to convert grassland to cropland. And the western region, South Dakota producers are less likely to do that. However, when the western region, South Dakota producers convert some grassland to cropland, they used to convert more acres compared to the eastern regions. And then if we look at the cropland to grassland conversion, we found that the acres converted is also more in the western South Dakota. So western South Dakota farmers converted more acres, either from grassland to cropland or from cropland to grassland. So this is like a regional difference. And if we look at the map, so in the map, we divide it into like either past or future. So look above, we can see the past 5 years. And so this side shows the grassland to cropland conversion. So we can see that the blue portion here, that means that more land is converted. So we can see more blue portions in the counties in the East River of South Dakota. And then from cropland to grassland, in the past 5 years, we see both East and West there a darker portion here and in the East as well. So we can see that both in the East and West, over the past 5 years, we have been seeing a higher rate of cropland to grassland conversion. Looking to the future, if we try to find out the grassland to cropland conversion trend in the future, we see that on the West River, the planning conversion is very low. However, in the East River, the counties with higher planned conversion rate, still quite a few counties with higher rate here. And on the other hand, if we look at the cropland to grassland conversion, we can see that in the future is most likely to be concentrated on the West River side. So the dark greens are most of all either on the river side or west of the river. So that kind of shows the regional trend of the past and future conversion trend. Okay, so we checked with producers what's the top 3 motivations for their grassland to cropland conversion. So we can see that profit is the most rated motivation. It's the first motivation for producer to make the conversion. So we can see nearly 60% converted their land use because of the profit. And then another reason rated by about 20% of producers is to producing feed for their livestock. And the more efficient cropping equipment is another reason for the grassland to cropland conversion. And another interesting reason here is the pressure by the landlord. So overall, we can see that the profit and producing feed for livestock is the 2 mostly rated motivations for the producers. So on the other way, we look at what's the 3 motivations for the cropland to grassland conversion. So the top reason, actually, nearly 2/3 of producers rated like better utilization of their marginal land. And then about over 10% mentioned they have increased stocking capacity on the existing grassland so that they want more grassland to expand their production. So these are 2 more major reasons. And of course, the changing crop livestock prices, which also changes the profit on the crop enterprise and livestock enterprise, is also a factor that affecting producer decisions. And the labor availability issues also rated by less than 5% of people. So overall, we can see the better utilization of marginal land is rated by most producers here as their motivation for the cropland to grassland conversion. Okay, so to conclude, we found that profit is the top motivation for the grassland to cropland conversion decisions made by farmers, followed by producing feed for livestock, and better utilization of marginal land is the top motivation for the cropland to grassland conversion decisions, followed by increasing stocking capacity. So we found like factors such as, what proportion of grassland you have on your farm and what's your farm location. Those factors can affect the producer's land use conversion decisions as well. So overall, our result shows that there is a net increase in grassland acres. So environmentally, that's kind of a positive trend towards a more sustainable land use during the 2018 to 2022 period. So some policy implications. So we found like increasing cropland acres, there has been a soil saline or sodic conditions, which has become a concern for farmers, not just in South Dakota, but in other northern Great Plains states. So utilize them as grassland offers farmers a potential environmental and economically feasible solution. So we can see that farmers already making that decisions, and which should be a positive way, both environmentally and economically. Another thing, policy side, we found that the grassland CRP enrollment in South Dakota has rapidly increased from 2017 to 2023, from 15,000 acres to 1.1 million acres. So this enrollment is very competitive. So the ranking factors is, maybe the different ranking factors such as the priority zone and the threats of conversion. So our survey results indicate that producers who operate farmland in eastern South Dakota and those who have smaller proportions of grassland, they are more likely to convert grassland to cropland. So therefore, those producers should be prioritized for funding from programs such as grassland CRP. Okay, so I want to acknowledge the financial support for this work provided by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition and a grant by the USDA NRCS. So we also show our sincere gratitude to Lynn Bass, Ron Nicole, and Jeff Zimbrich for their valuable inputs in developing this survey instrument used for our study. Thank you. And you can find my contact information on the left. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Tong. And thank you, Han, for your information earlier.